Welcome to Cornerstone Today. This is a daily moment in the Word designed to help you start your day grounded, steady, and focused on what matters most. Each weekday morning we'll open Scripture together, seeking clarity, strength, and hope for the day ahead. This is about learning to walk with Jesus in real life, right where you are. Let's begin today in the Word. Good morning and welcome to Cornerstone Today. It is Matthew Allen. I am so glad to be with you here on this Wednesday morning, and we're going to be picking up in Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 to 42 today. And before I get into the text itself, I want to remind you of what Jesus is doing in this text. He's really giving us two pictures, and it's all in one move. He's going to be going after the heart that's underneath the rule. And what he's doing here is he's asking, what kind of person are you when you have leverage over someone else? Leverage in your speech or in your response to someone when they've done something to you. It's the same argument. It's just two different illustrations. And so let's read the passage together now, starting in verse 33. Again, you have heard it was said that to our ancestors, you must not break your oath, but you must keep your oaths to the Lord. But I tell you, don't take an oath at all, either by heaven, because it is God's throne, or by the earth, because it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, because it is the city of your great king. Do not swear by your head, because you cannot make a single hair white or black. But let your yes mean yes, and your no mean no. Anything more than this is from the evil one. You have heard it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, don't resist an evildoer. On the contrary, if anyone slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. As for the one who wants to sue you and take away your shirt, let him have your coat as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to the one who asks you, and don't turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. Now, this is the second part of what we started a couple of days ago, and Jesus has been teaching in one style since verse 21 of the chapter. He says it again and again. You have heard it said, but I tell you. He's named what is underneath the surface of murder. He's named what is underneath the surface of adultery. And yesterday, we sat with what he says about divorce. And now, today, 2 more illustrations in the same way. He talks about oaths and retaliation. And the pattern doesn't change. He keeps reaching past the rule to the heart that's underneath. He goes past the technicality of the law to the kind of person that God is forming his people to be. And so when we read these verses, we're not picking up random topics from the Sermon on the Mount. We've been watching Jesus do the same thing that he's been doing the whole time. And this is the unity that I want you to carry through both parts of today's reading. Both parts are about how a kingdom person handles power over other people. You know, words are a kind of power. And so the response that we're permitted to give when something has been done to us is under view. When I make a promise, I'm using my words to shape what someone else expects. When I respond in kind to what's been done to me, I am using whatever leverage I have to even the score. And Jesus is reshaping both of those. He's asking, when you have leverage over another person, what kind of person are you? So let's take the first half. Verse 33. Again, you have heard it was said to our ancestors, you must not break your oath, but you must keep your oaths to the Lord. Now that is the standard rabbinic teaching of Jesus' day, and it's based on real Old Testament instruction. You can find that in Leviticus 19, Numbers 30, and Deuteronomy 23. God's people were told not to swear falsely, and they were told to keep the vows that they made. You know, the Old Testament never forbade oaths. It commanded honesty in them. But by Jesus' time, an entire industry had grown up figuring out which oaths actually counted. You could swear by Jerusalem and maybe wiggle out of it. You could swear by the temple, which was non-binding. You could swear by the gold of the temple. If you did that, now you're stuck. The whole system existed to give people deniability, all the while sounding sincere. It was the way to use the appearance of a promise without the actual substance of one. Words were dressed up to look weighty while the back door cracked open. And Jesus walks in and says, don't take an oath at all. Now, he's not banning every formal oath in society. We know that because Jesus answers later under oath in this very gospel. And Paul calls God to witness in his letters. So the Bible doesn't contradict itself over 5 chapters. What Jesus is doing is removing the entire game board. He goes through the popular escape hatches one by one: heaven, earth, Jerusalem, your own head, and shows that none of them get God out of the picture, because heaven is his throne and earth is his footstool. Jerusalem is the city of the great king. And your head? Well, you can't even change your hair color by your will. You don't even own that. There's no neutral ground. Everything that you might swear on belongs to God. And so all the loopholes collapse at the same time. Now, verse 37, let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Anything more than this is from the evil one. You know, that last part there, that is really something that we need to really concentrate on. Speech distortion is not just a cultural habit that Jesus is correcting. It goes all the way back to the original liar. There is something spiritually crooked about needing to dress up your words to make them believable. And the replacement that Jesus is offering is not just a new rule, it's a new kind of person. Someone whose plain word can carry weight precisely because there's nothing crooked underneath it that needs to be propped up. Their yes is reliable, their no is reliable. They don't need oath stamps to be trusted because they live in the truth. Now, let's look at the second part of today's reading, verse 38. You have heard it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So again, I think it's important here that we stop and get the Old Testament right, because this can get misread. This formula shows up 3 times in the Old Testament, in Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy, and every time it functions as a limit on the courts. It is judicial restraint. Proportionality is the ceiling, and the idea here is that you can't take a life over taking out someone's tooth. You can't level a household over a stolen sheep. And by the rabbinical period, the courts had largely commuted the principle to monetary compensation anyway. The literal application wasn't really happening in court. What was happening in Jesus' day was that the courtroom restraint had bled into a personal ethic. People had taken what was meant to limit retaliation in court and turned it into a license to retaliate in personal life. And so the idea here was that I'm entitled to give back what was given to me. That's the drift that Jesus is correcting. The principle that was supposed to keep things proportional in a legal setting, that had been pulled out of the courtroom and into the heart, where it became something that it was never designed to be. And what Jesus is doing here is he's pulling that back in. Verse 39, but I tell you, don't resist an evildoer. Now, we need to listen to that very carefully, because the verb picture here is not to be passive. It is not to be unsafe. The picture is don't oppose in kind. Don't return what has been done to you. Don't mirror it back. That is the target. And so Jesus is talking about the reflex inside of us that wants to even the score. And he's pulling it up by the roots. And he gives us 4 illustrations. The first one, verse 39 again, is the slap on the right cheek. Now, In that culture, in that day and age, a right-handed person striking someone on their right cheek was using the back of the hand. It wasn't a fight, it was an insult. It was the cultural picture of public humiliation between people who were equal socially. It was a challenge to your honor. It was not a threat to your life. And Jesus says, refuse to mirror the contempt. Don't return the dishonor. You stand there with dignity. You let the moment pass without becoming what just got handed to you. Now, verse 40. As for the one who wants to sue you and take away your shirt, let him have your coat as well. Again, understanding the cultural background here is very important. A poor man's outer cloak was protected by the law of Moses. It was non-negotiable in court. Exodus 22 says, give it back before sundown so that the man has something to sleep under. So Jesus is naming the situation where someone is squeezing you for what they don't even have the right to take. And he says, don't let your possessions own you. Don't let what someone is trying to take become the thing that defines how you respond. And this one, it's something else. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him too. The picture here is a Roman soldier in occupied Judea. By Roman custom, a soldier could compel any citizen to carry his pack for up to 1 mile. That custom produced real, daily bitterness in the Jewish countryside. And Jesus says, take it the 2nd mile. Now, what's under that? Well, first, the 1st mile is forced. The 2nd mile is chosen. The kingdom person refuses to lose moral agency just because someone with power leaned on him. They keep the freedom to act. They don't let bitterness shape who they're becoming. Now, that's not weakness. That is strength operating in a different gear. And then look at verse 42. Give to the one who asks you, and don't turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. So again, what we see here, open hand, not a closed fist. Now, Jesus is not laying down a flat rule that every dollar goes to everyone who asks. Scripture has plenty to say about stewardship and prudence and taking care of your own household. But what Jesus is defining here is really a default stance that we need to take. The kingdom heart leans toward need. Its first instinct is not to protect what's mine. Its first instinct is to be open toward the person standing in front of me. So both halves of the passage do the same thing. On oaths, Jesus refuses the question of which words trap me. On retaliation, Jesus refuses the question of how much I'm owed in return. Both of those are wrong questions. The right question is the one that Jesus has been asking the entire sermon. What kind of person are you when you hold leverage over someone else? So we're talking about word power and response power. He's not patching the rules. He's reshaping the heart beneath them. And this is where I don't want to leave you today. Don't hear this passage as a heavier rule book to fall back against. Hear it the way that the New Testament teaches it. Peter writes about Jesus. Here's 1 Peter 2. When he was insulted, he did not insult in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but entrusted himself to the one who judges justly. And Christ lived this passage before he ever taught it. Isaiah saw it centuries before, where he's prophesied like a sheep silent before her shearers, he did not open his mouth. And so what this sermon is describing is what Jesus embodied. And here's the grace that I want us to really focus on. The Spirit is forming that same shape in you. You're not striving on your own to manufacture this kind of life. The Spirit is in you, and He is the one doing the reshaping, and you are simply responding to Him. Grace is not the absence of the call. Grace is the power to answer it. So here's where I want you to land today. 2 places that I want you to look. For example, where in your week are you reaching for the oath stamp? Where do you find yourself saying, I swear, or honest to God, or trust me on this, to make people believe what should be believable on its own. And what's underneath the word that needs the prop? And second, what are you keeping as a private scoreboard? Where are you mentally tallying slights and waiting for your chance to even the score? And what kind of person do you want to be when you've got the leverage to respond in kind? Now, these aren't rules to follow. They are places to notice, places where Jesus is reshaping our heart, and those things should be starting to show up in real life. Tomorrow, we're going to be back together, and we're going to be looking at how Jesus is going to push harder. We've seen today what it means to refuse to mirror what's been done to us. That's the floor of the Christian life. Tomorrow, we'll hear what it means to actually love the very people who've stood against us. That's the ceiling. Same chapter, same heart formation. May the Lord bless you, my friends, and keep his face turned towards you today. I'm Matthew Allen. Thank you for being here. We will see you tomorrow. Thanks for spending these moments in the Word today. As you go, remember this: faithfulness is built one ordinary day at a time. Keep walking with Jesus. Keep listening. Keep trusting. God is at work all the time. Join us again every weekday morning for another moment of encouragement and truth here on Cornerstone Today.